All right, party peoples of the interwebs, for today's vlog, we are taking a trip behind the Maple Gulag. We are crossing the Iron Rainbow.
We are going back to Canada.
Well, actually, not technically going back to Canada. I am very happy here in the sunny state of Florida, but we are going to cover a Canadian story. Viva Fry, former Montreal litigator turned current Florida Rumbler in my home office. We are going to take a proverbial trip back to Canada to cover a story that is a mouthful to say. It is the story of a federal court rejecting the contestation of Justin Trudeau's invocation of the prorogation of Parliament. We'll explain it right now. From the National Post, Trudeau was within his rights to request prorogation, federal court says, in historic ruling. The applicants failed to demonstrate that the Prime Minister exceeded any limits established by the written constitution, Justice Paul Crampton wrote in his decision. Now, for those of you out there who don't speak legalese, and for those of you out there who do not speak Canadian parliamentary legalese, what is prorogation of Parliament? To begin with, I'll take the explanation from Grok because it does tend to simplify the explanations and summarize them in a way that even non-Canadians can understand. So Grok explains prorogation of Parliament, here it is. Grok 3 Beta. In Canada, prorogation is a parliamentary procedure where the government temporarily suspends the activities of Parliament, ending a session. The Canadian government, operating under a Westminster-style parliamentary system, prorogues Parliament for a few key reasons rooted in both tradition and practical governance. Constitutional authority. Prorogation is a prerogative power exercised by the Governor-General, acted on the advice of the Prime Minister. Legislative reset. Prorogation clears the slate of unfinished business. Bills that haven't passed into law by the end of a session die on the order paper unless reintroduced in the next session. This allows the government to reassess its priorities, yada, yada, yada. Political strategy. Governments sometimes use prorogation tactically. For example, it can delay or avoid contentious debates, reset public focus, or buy time to address internal party issues or scandals. And then the last one, routine governance. Now, some of you might recall that Justin Trudeau recently announced that he was resigning as Prime Minister of Canada, or I should more specifically say he announced his intention to resign after he was replaced after a robust national leadership race within the Liberal Party. And in that time, he prorogued Parliament. I think it was from sometime in January until March 24th, give or take.
I've also had a chance to reflect and have had long talks with my family about our future. Throughout the course of my career, any success I have personally achieved has been because of their support and with their encouragement. So last night over dinner, I told my kids about the decision that I'm sharing with you today. I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process.
So you can pick your reason as to why Justin Trudeau prorogued Parliament while they hold leadership races to replace this guy on the ticket, and it's going to be replaced by, it looks like, Mark Carney, a WEF 3 passport-carrying globalist stooge.
Welcome to this session, Carbon Markets, a conversation with Bill Gates, Mark Carney, Annette Nazareth, and Bill Winters. My name is Nicole Schwab. I'm the co-director of the Platform to Accelerate Nature-Based Solutions at the World Economic Forum, and I will be your moderator for this session.
Well, thank you, Nicole, and let me compliment the leaders of this task force. It's a remarkable achievement. First thing to say is that this carbon budget is very precious. On business as usual, so pre-pandemic emissions, we have less than a decade of a carbon budget to remain within 1.5 degree temperature increases. So it is a limited carbon budget.
Setting that aside, they prorogued Parliament. It is not in session as of now. And that prorogation of Parliament was contested by the applicants in this case, and the court came down and said, yeah, the prorogation was legitimate. It's not the first time, by the way, that a prorogation of Parliament has been contested. Boris Johnson did it a few years back during the Brexit crisis scandal, whatever the heck you want to call it. Boris Johnson's prorogation of Parliament was itself contested at the time, but in that case, they found a reason, they found a way unanimously to declare that prorogation of Parliament unlawful. From an article in The Guardian from 2019, the first legal question the judges had to resolve was whether the Prime Minister's decision exploiting residual royal prerogative powers was, quote, justiciable, end quote, and could consequently be subjected to scrutiny by the courts. The English High Court declined to intervene. The Scottish Appeal Court concluded that judges did have legal authority to act. The Supreme Court supported the Scottish interpretation. Delivering judgment, Hale said, quote, the question arises in circumstances which have never arisen before and are unlikely to arise again, end quote. Then, giving the court's judgment on whether the decision to suspend Parliament was legal, Hale said, quote, this court has concluded that the Prime Minister's advice to Her Majesty to suspend Parliament was unlawful, void, and of no effect. This means that the order in council to which it led was also unlawful, void, and of no effect should be quashed. So when Boris Johnson uses the parliamentary powers to prorogue Parliament in the context of the Brexit crisis, the courts somehow find a way to intervene, determine it to be a justiciable manner, and in a unanimous 11-0 decision, declare his prorogation of Parliament to be unlawful when Justin Trudeau does it. Thus far, the federal court has said,
I'll allow it.
But before we even get back to the ratification of Justin Trudeau's invocation of the prorogation of Parliament, what a mouthful to say, and I said it in one breath. There have been controversies as to how the powers of prorogation have been exercised in Canadian politics. In 2002, Governor General Adrienne Clarkson accepted Prime Minister Jean Chrétien's advice to prorogue Parliament, allowing Chrétien to avoid tabling a report of the House of Commons Public Accounts Committee regarding the sponsorship scandal that surrounded Chrétien's party at the time. After Parliament was again summoned, investigations into the scandal continued. Chrétien stepped down as Prime Minister in December of the following year, and the Liberal Party was reduced to a minority government in the subsequent election. A prorogation of Parliament took place on December 4, 2008, when Prime Minister Stephen Harper advised Governor General Michael Jean to do so after the opposition Liberal and New Democratic parties formed a coalition with the support of the Bloc Québécois party and threatened to vote non-confidence in the sitting minority government, precipitating a parliamentary dispute. So yeah, it's not the first time there have been questionable uses of the power of prorogation. It's just the first time someone has actually challenged it, and it's the first time the courts have actually ratified what would otherwise be considered potentially an abusive exercise of the power of prorogation. And no doubt, had someone challenged Jean Chrétien's exercise of the power, they would have deemed it to be appropriate, and had someone challenged Stephen Harper's use of the power, they would have deemed it to be inappropriate, but for now, it's been deemed appropriate. Back to the article in the National Post, Ottawa. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was entirely within his rights to ask the Governor General to prorogue Parliament in January, ruled the Chief Justice of the Federal Court in a first ever decision of its kind. In a highly anticipated decision published Thursday evening, Federal Court Chief Justice Paul Crampton ruled that Trudeau had not exceeded any constitutional powers or conventions when he asked Governor General Mary Simon to prorogue Parliament for nearly 3 months in early January. Quote, the applicants failed to demonstrate that the Prime Minister exceeded any limits established by the written Constitution, including sections 3 and 5 of the Charter, or by the unwritten principles they identified, end quote, he wrote. Quote, the applicants also failed to demonstrate that the Prime Minister exceeded any other legal limits, end quote, he added. The unprecedented challenge to Trudeau's request to prorogue in early January was launched by 2 Nova Scotians, David Joseph McKinnon and Aris Lavernos. They were funded by the civil liberties group, the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms, the JCCF. In January, Trudeau justified his request by arguing that Parliament needed a, quote, reset, end quote, due to a, quote, total lack of productivity, end quote, after months of procedural paralysis. He also said it would give time to the Liberal Party of Canada, the LPC, to choose a new leader. Quote, the reset that we have is actually 2 parts. One is the prorogation, but the other part is recognizing that removing me from the equation as the leader who will fight the next election for the Liberal Party should also decrease the level of polarization that we're seeing right now, end quote, he added. Later on in the article, this case is a first since a landmark 2019 decision in which the UK Supreme Court put the brakes on then Prime Minister Boris Johnson's bid to silence parliamentary debate ahead of the October 31 Brexit deadline. The top court in the UK found at the time that Johnson used prorogation to block Parliament from intervening in Brexit just weeks before the withdrawal deadline. So it used exceptional powers to reverse prorogation. The opponents to Trudeau's decision to request prorogation argued that the case showed the court could intervene with what is known as a Crown prerogative to prorogue Parliament. Crampton disagreed. Quote, neither the effect of the decision that is currently before me nor the overall circumstances related to it are similarly exceptional, end quote, he wrote. Now, I don't recall exactly what I said at the time, but I believe that I predicted that the courts would find a way to ratify the prorogation because the system is entirely politicized, it's entirely weaponized, and you're going to find that the courts do not want to intervene in any case because it would have been basically academic to force the government to reconvene a mere 2 or 3 weeks before the deadline of the prorogation was set to expire anyhow. But the bottom line, yeah, the federal court now came in and said, Justin Trudeau, you were fine in proroguing Parliament for a damn near 3 months, shutting down the government, and in the meantime, you remain as the head of the party, you remain as the one causing irreparable damage to Canada, but you're holding your leadership race, and I think that result is going to be in sometime early next week, if not Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. But the bottom line, the courts found a way to ratify yet another decision of Justin Trudeau to basically shut down the government for his own political profit. Oh yeah, and before we step back from the Maple Gulag, the Iron Rainbow, make sure that you are liked, shared, subscribed, that you have notifications turned on. But that is the latest coming out of Canada. If you like what I do, you know what to do. Most importantly, exercise, eat healthy, sunlight, talk to people in real life, and now you know your vlog. Peace out, peeps. Booyah!
This court has already concluded that the Prime Minister's advice to Her Majesty was unlawful, void, and of no effect. This means that the order in council to which it led was also unlawful, void, and of no effect, and should be quashed. This means that when the Royal Commissioners walked into the House of Lords, It was as if they had walked in with a blank sheet of paper. The prorogation was also void and of no effect. Parliament has not been prorogued. This is the unanimous judgment of all 11 justices.